Today, we are taking a really hard look at something that affects almost every single one of us, especially when you're just starting out in life. You know, your 20s are this incredibly exciting time. You might finally have a little more money in your pocket and for sure a whole lot more freedom. It's totally normal to feel pretty much invincible during this phase. But the truth? It's actually a highly vulnerable crossroad. The financial decisions you're making right now are absolutely critical, and unfortunately, it's the perfect time to fall into some major self-sabotaging traps that can actually keep you poor.
There's a quote that perfectly captures what's at stake here. If someone makes a financial mistake at this point in their life, it will send shockwaves through their entire future. That's the reality we're dealing with today. We're going to break down 8 incredibly common money habits that quietly but relentlessly destroy wealth. These are the silent killers of financial freedom, and honestly, I want to make sure you don't fall victim to a single one of them.
Okay, let's dive into this. To make sense of these 8 self-sabotaging habits, we've grouped them into 3 massive traps you need to avoid. First, Trap 1, the ego trap. Then, Trap 2, the impulse trap. Next, Trap 3, the time trap. And finally, we'll cover exactly how to stop this self-sabotage for good.
Let's start with Trap 1, the ego trap. So, the ego trap is all about this incredibly expensive desire to rewrite reality using easy credit, basically just to look successful to your friends. Take a look at this number, $5,700. Back in 2020, that was the average American household credit card debt. And why does that matter to you? Because the very friends you are going broke trying to impress are probably just faking it themselves. They are literally drowning in debt just to maintain a shiny illusion of success. Easy access to credit makes it so simple for people to project a fake reality. But here's the thing. True friends couldn't care less what you spend your money on. They're going to stick by you no matter what your wallet looks like.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the biggest ego traps out there, going into huge debt for a sweet ride. It is so tempting to finance a brand new car just to turn heads. But listen, car dealerships aren't really selling cars anymore. They're selling finance. They want to lock you into the longest payment term possible. And new cars, they have a razor-sharp depreciation curve. You'll lose half the car's value before you even know it. The smart money does the exact opposite. They buy a cool, pre-owned car right at the bottom of its depreciation curve. You get all the upside, and when you go to sell it a couple of years later, you might get exactly what you paid for it. It's practically free to own.
Now, another huge part of the ego trap is expensive relationships and dating. It's super tempting to splash cash on extravagant dates or gifts to win someone over. But look, if you start a relationship by just waving money around, you are practically guaranteed to attract the wrong people. You want someone who loves you for your passions and who you are, not your bank account. And this absolutely applies to weddings too. Our source shared this amazing story about how they actually waited 16 years to afford their dream wedding. They completely refused to go into debt or cut corners in their 20s, and instead they just waited until they had the actual real wealth to make the whole shebang a reality.
So, just to summarize the ego trap, it really boils down to these 3 specific habits. Keeping up with friends who are probably deep in debt themselves, going into massive finance debt for a depreciating new car, and blowing money to impress romantic partners. Letting go of your ego is literally your first major step toward building real, lasting wealth.
Moving right along to Trap 2, the impulse trap.
The impulse trap catches you when you start prioritizing short-term gratification over long-term security. It's all about acting on emotion rather than looking at the math. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the vulnerability here. It's staggering. Over 60% of millennials cannot cover a simple $1,000 minor emergency. They just don't have a basic backup fund. And when you live completely in the moment without any safety net, one tiny bit of bad luck can absolutely ruin you.
Let me share a really painful, real-world anecdote from our source about this. When he was 19 years old, he bought a car he couldn't really afford, using a loan. Well, 1 month later, the engine completely blew up. And because he didn't have a backup fund, he was forced to take on massive, crushing debt just to put a new engine into a car he was already struggling to pay for. It forced him into this vicious cycle of debt that literally took a full year of relentless side hustling to finally break free from, all because of one impulse buy without a safety net. And you know, this impulsive lack of planning easily bleeds into another massive life decision, moving out of home too soon. We've all felt it, the emotional rush of imagining your own apartment, picking out a big couch, hosting house parties. The freedom is intoxicating, but then reality hits hard. You aren't just paying rent. You're paying for maintenance, commuting, and huge grocery bills.
Honestly, if you can slightly abuse your parents' generosity in a good way, staying at home is the best value accommodation you are ever going to find. Do the math, stay home as long as you possibly can, and invest the difference.
So to recap, the habits making up the impulse trap are overdrinking and partying, which, let's be honest, is many people's absolute kryptonite, failing to build that essential backup fund, and letting the emotional desire for freedom push you to move out before you are financially ready. Every single dollar you impulsively throw away today is a dollar that cannot grow for your tomorrow.
Now for our final and most critical trap. Trap 3, the time trap.
When you're young, you might not have a ton of capital, but you are incredibly rich in one specific asset: time. Squandering this is the ultimate self-sabotage. Which brings us to a quote often attributed to Albert Einstein: "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world." This isn't just some inspiring poster on a wall. It is an undeniable mathematical fact. When you're young, time is the magic ingredient that turns small amounts of money into absolute fortunes. Starting early isn't a nice-to-have, it's non-negotiable.
Let me show you exactly what I mean here. If you invest just $100 a month starting early, let's say for 30 years at a 7% return, you end up with nearly $117,000 in your retirement fund. But look at row 2. If you make excuses like, "Oh, I've got a mortgage," or "I really want to go on holiday," and you put off investing for just 10 years, investing that exact same $100 for 20 years instead, you only end up with $50,000. Think about that. Waiting just 10 years costs you nearly $67,000 in free money. And those 10 years of missing contributions, that was only 12 grand out of your pocket. The cost of waiting is just astronomical.
But time isn't just for compound interest, it's for building your skills too. If you are just sitting around wasting your free time, potential income is quite literally slipping through your fingers. Our source shares an incredible story about this. As a kid, he used his spare time, even while he was totally bored in Mr. Willard's geography class, to sketch model planes. He built his skills early, and those childhood sketches eventually evolved into a global business manufacturing the biggest-selling RC aircraft in the entire UK. Your free time is without a doubt the greatest capital you have to invest in yourself.
Wrapping up the time trap, the habits are simple but totally devastating. Not taking advantage of your free time to build skills or side hustles, and putting off your retirement investing. A golden rule to take away from this explainer is to invest a minimum, at least 10% of everything you earn, and start right now. You have to let time do the heavy lifting for you.
Section 4. Stopping self-sabotage. So the crucial point is this: breaking these 8 habits requires a fundamental shift in your mindset. You must stop trying to look rich and start actively building real wealth by recognizing exactly when your ego, your impulses, or your procrastination are steering the ship. I want to leave you with this final provocative question to think about. Are you building an illusion of wealth, or are you letting time build your reality? Live within your means, protect your money from your ego, guard it from those impulsive decisions, and most importantly, put your time to work. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now go out there and make your money work for you.